Today, I'm talking with Clara Paye, the founder of Unite Foods, the world's first globally inspired protein bar brand, on a mission to bring unique flavors from around the world to your pantry. I love this brand. It's delicious, but it's also healthy and nostalgic and comforting, but also brings these amazing flavors like churro and baklava and Mexican chocolate, as well as American favorites like PB&J. So delicious, interesting. I love your graphics. We're going to talk about that. And Clara also is the founder of a nonprofit supporting other founders in CPG, a mentor, and just an active member of CPG and founder community. So hello. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for the introduction. Appreciate that.
I know. I was so thrilled when Denise put me in touch with you. We're going to start easy. Obviously, I've tried your brand. I've been looking at, I'd heard of it before I was introduced to you. But do you want to just quickly start off by giving us a quick kind of elevator pitch for Unite?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So, Unite is the world's first, what we say, globally inspired protein bar. We believe that, the world is full of flavor, and the protein bar aisle wasn't when we started. It was really kind of like, a rerun of the same flavors: chocolate, peanut butter, and vanilla. And so I'm an immigrant. I was born in Africa in the Sudan and came to the US at the age of 5 and was on my own wellness journey when I was diagnosed with gluten intolerance and went on a quest to find diet compliant food. Found my way into the protein bar aisle and just said, hey, like, we can do better. Like, these flavors just don't resonate with me, and they can be really yummy and be good for you. So that's how we started.
That's amazing. And how did you? So I was, you're obviously a real go-getter, and you seem to have always had quite an entrepreneurial spirit. Like, how did you make the move into being a founder of a food company?
Yeah, I mean, it was just out of my own personal frustration in wellness and a need that I kind of identified. And I think when you're wired for entrepreneurship, it's natural to always be thinking, like, what's missing and where can I plug something in? It's just how you approach life. Like, wouldn't it be great if there was somebody that made X? Wouldn't it be great if there was a service that did Y? And I think that that's just like normal entrepreneurial people. Like, that's how they're always thinking. And I think actually most people are always trying to problem solve for their own problems. And so it really started very grassroots. I started as a frustrated mom and a frustrated person trying to find diet compliant food that tasted good, that didn't taste like cardboard, food I wanted to eat,
Yeah,
not food I had to eat. And so really started blending in my own kitchen and experimenting and said, like, why doesn't this exist? And then started looking at, I always like to corroborate my hunches with data. And so started looking at US Census data and saw that, like, the US population was continuing to grow in multiculturalism, and there was, greater growth in diversity. And that was not just a trend that was going to continue.
yeah. So starting in your kitchen, playing with flavors, and then how did the brand come about? Talk to me about your kind of brand creation process.
Yeah, so that first impetus, I got my Cuisinart out and started, mixing up all these different flavors. And my poor friends and family, they were my guinea pigs. And I'd say, try this one and try that one. And I probably tried 15 different iterations of different flavors, everything I could think of, everything I was inspired by, kind of in my own local community or in my personal life. And then once I knew that I did have something and it did taste great, those are kind of foundational. It had to do a job and it had to taste great. Then I kind of got serious about it and found a food scientist that could help me professionalize my recipe, my formula, as we call it in the CPG
To
space.
manufacture.
Yes. And so, I wanted it to be high quality. And so, that's where kind of being a novice helped me, is that I didn't use artificial things. I used things that I could find in my own kitchen, things that I could find in my own grocery store. It didn't come out of a lab. It really came out of my own, creation inside, what an average American could go buy locally. And so that was, we found the food scientist and she took my recipe and made it into a manufacturable formula. And then it was about pitching co-packers to try to get somebody to make it and, wanted to make sure I made a really high quality, safe product. So, we had very high safety and quality standards, and that's where we started.
Amazing, amazing. And so, you know, I think it's so interesting. When did you're starting to make these things? Is that when the kind of inspiration for the global flavors came into it, or you're thinking there's a gap on, the flavors are also dull in the current kind of protein bar category? Like, talk to me about how you started putting this brand together. Like, what came first, the global flavors or the I can do this better? Yeah, how did you kind of bring this idea to life?
It was for sure the global flavors. So it was actually, I was listening to another founder of a very successful food brand talk about her startup journey in bars. And, she exited and sold her business, but she was talking about how she was inspired to make the bars. And then she, started creating like apple pie flavor and blueberry flavor. And that's when I kind of had an aha moment. I was like, oh, like that's why I don't like bars. Like those are not nostalgic to me. And so, I started to think about nostalgia and like what that means in wellness. And like, you'll only eat food, the food that you grew up with, the food that you akin to like comfort is the food that you crave. And so I wanted it to be craveable. And so I saw this huge opportunity in global flavors, quite frankly, because I live in Los Angeles and where I'm surrounded by this multicultural community of immigrants from all over the world. And, every kind of cuisine is available. And I just thought like, gosh, like this could be a really interesting, merge. And I don't think that, it was intentional. I don't think the wellness community intentionally left everybody, kind of on the sidelines. I just think it was oversight, like keep making bars that people buy. And if people keep buying peanut butter bars, they're only going to be sell peanut butter bars. So that's really how it started. And yeah, it was always flavor first. Like flavor was the unique selling proposition that I had in mind.
Yeah, amazing. And then the name and the graphics, I'm interested. For background, I help brands, often big companies, create products and brands. Like, talk to me about your process starting from scratch. You've got this great idea, global flavors. It's going to be good for gluten intolerance. It's going to be, better for you. Like,
Mhm.
talk to me about the name and the design. Who helped you? How did you go about this process?
Yeah, the name was the hardest part because I knew what I wanted to do, which was like include more people. I wanted it to represent fun and flavor. And so my process was pretty funny. Like I just got post-it notes and I just wrote every like adjective of everything I wanted to accomplish in this brand and just started writing all these words and posting them up, kind of behind my desk. And every time I think of a word like adventure or wanderlust or, whatever the words were, and I would just like put them up, right? And then, I just almost like a vision board where you're just trying to manifest like what the brand name should be from like this jumble of words. I just let my brain work, my subconscious work on it. And so I went on a hike one day when like it was kind of coming like due time, like you need a name, like pick a name because we need to work on the packaging. And I was like, I am stuck and I don't know the name yet. And I'm going to go on a hike and see if it'll come to me. And I was, talking it through with myself. And I was like, what is it that I'm actually trying to do? And it's really like to unite. The United States of America is like multicultural, it's this beautiful melting pot. So I was like, I wonder if the name Unite is available. Right. And it didn't seem like plausible that it would be,
I
but it
know. I mean,
was.
yeah, I mean, it is amazing that the trademark was available. I mean, well done. It's a great name.
Thank you.
And I love how you've built out, each letter standing for something and everything's kind of coalescing around that thought. Yeah, I'm surprised you got the trademark, but it's a great name.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I filed the trademark myself. So, it's like, when you're a scrappy entrepreneur, you kind of like do the things that you need to do. But I love the name. It really does represent the brand well. It represents, my intention well. And it's been a fun journey. And then the packaging design, back in 2019, when I was ideating 2018, kind of building, thinking, the protein bar space was a sea of white and beige and green and brown. And it really all screamed natural and wholesome and organic, but it didn't scream fun or flavor or food that you wanted to eat. So I took a lot of cues from food you wanted to eat, potato chips and candy bars and, food that was like yummy and, was associated with treating yourself, not like, just being on some kind of diet. And I saw that like, color really stood out to me in my mind. And, when I think of global flavors, I think of color. I think of um, the world markets, and I think of travel, and I think in color when I think of, travel and world. And so I knew that I wanted color to be strong in the brand. And now like lots of people have jumped on that bandwagon. And so, the nutrition bar space is now very colorful, but I like to think that we help set that tone and set that intention in the space.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. So the brief was color, world, global. Yeah. And I love that you have, you really do, unlike a lot of the protein bars, I feel like you've really brought in taste and flavor and craveability into your packaging in an interesting way. Um, who did you work with someone, or did you bring someone on to help you, or
Yeah, I found a small boutique agency in Austin, and I remember I flew down for a meeting, and I think in like 2 hours we had the whole thing designed. We
that's
had done
amazing.
some brief work ahead of time, but I knew very clearly what I wanted.
Yeah,
And she was a great partner um, in helping me, kind of ideate on how could that show up. And like the first iterations were not quite what I wanted, but I knew that if I could just I can't draw, but I can tell you what I want, right?
yeah,
And I can very clearly see what I want. And so we were just a good team because she was open to allowing me to like co-create with her.
yeah.
And so, I wanted, and she did all these beautiful hand-drawn patterns that became, really great collateral for the brand. And like that was like, it was a good combination.
Yeah, creating lots of assets that you can use everywhere. I think that's great. Um, and then in terms of, do you do research? Like, how do you start thinking about new products? How do you bring consumers into the journey? Like, what sort of ways do you kind of do consumer kind of testing, or thinking about, whether a product is right, whether a package is right?
Yeah, we do some consumer testing. We do some surveying when we're trying to make packaging design or choices between them. I think for like flavor and cues, that really just comes from my own inspiration. Like, what do I see? In my community? Where do what is craveable to me? And I think a lot of founders do this, like they identify themselves too much with the brand. And so I'm trying to be a little bit more strategic about how I come up with flavors. But we do invite our community to help us, and we get great flavor suggestions all the time. On the back of every package is an invitation to tell us your favorite flavor. And, that is a big part of the brand. It's to unite. It's not to tell you what you want. It's let's co-create what you want and build something together. And every flavor is kind of a nod to a certain culture or region of the world. And I like to pick broad flavors that appeal to a lot of people.
Yeah. So being inspired by the community in the world is kind of part of the process. It seems very fitting for the brand. Um, now you did launch right smack bang in the middle of COVID. I mean, that's quite how tell me about launching your first brand actually, in the middle of COVID. It seems like it definitely didn't make things easier, or were there plus positives?
Yeah, I think it definitely, the timing of our launch set the trajectory for the brand. Before COVID, global flavor was not a trend. Global flavor and travel they were not big trends in flavor. And so we were bringing something completely new, completely different. And the intersection of not being able to travel and everyone being at home really made everybody crave travel. And like, how could I experience something new and unique when every single day literally looks the same? And so we hit this like inflection point just at the right time, having a packaged food that was a global flavor and being right on trend. And that was very lucky, right? In terms of like the timing of that. I think a lot of people would not, have discovered the brand if we hadn't been in COVID, right? Because people were looking for new things, retailers were looking for new things. And, we had an opportunity to pitch some of the world's largest retailers our first year, which is amazing and unheard of and wonderful, right? And so for me, it ended up being something that helped. But at the very beginning, it did feel very dismal. And I remember people just like apologizing to me, like, I'm so sorry that this is happening to your brand. I'm so sorry. Now, and in my thought, I'm an eternal optimist. I'm like, well, it's not just happening to me, it's happening to you too, and it's happening to everybody. So at least the playing field is level. It's not like a fire that burned down my factory and only my factory was, affected. This is a global thing, and there will always be opportunities if you look for them. And so, and the opportunity for us was really to be charitable from the very beginning and to start donating bars really from month one, and, going into food banks and first responders and hospitals and charities, and really set the tone for the business. I mean, we always had a charitable aspect to what we wanted to do, but it's just like from the very beginning was that. So it was just, it ended up being okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't even think about that as actually something that could be quite helpful, like people being stuck in their homes and this being an opportunity to literally travel through what you eat. That's such an interesting yeah, and it reminds me, having kind of listened to a few interviews with you, I'm kind of amazed by, you've got such an amazing kind of optimism, um and kind of growth mindset. Yeah, where does that come from? How do I get some of that?
I think it just comes from resilience building. I think I, came to the US and I didn't speak any English, at the age of 5. And so from the very beginning, had these barriers that I had to overcome and become really self-sufficient. And when you're a child of an immigrant, you almost become a parent sometimes, where you're like doing things for your parents, like translating or helping make doctor's appointments. Or so you're thrust kind of like in this adult world. And so by nature or nurture, I was like thrust into this environment where I had to be self-sufficient, and I've been able to figure it out,
Yeah,
figure it out. And I always like to say everything is figure outable, right? Like it's just if you want to be in business, your job is to solve problems.
yeah,
And when you welcome problems as a part of the process and not like, oh, woe is me, something that's happening to me, it's just a challenge and you go hard towards that challenge. That's where you can, it's like a muscle. And so, it's possible and you can continue. You just have to figure out the next step.
yeah. I mean, I love that. You've called it kind of fearless positivity, having that, drive and optimism to help you solve problems, get through. Um, I mean, it's interesting. I'm an immigrant here. I'm actually a child of immigrants. I don't know if I'm so optimistic as you. Maybe that's growing up in England is lacks the cultural positivity. I don't know. Um, it is. I mean, it's hard to ignore everything going on at the moment politically in terms of immigration, and you know, I'm sure, just like me, psychically, it's got to be a little depressing. Not woe is me, but how do you think about your fantastic optimistic brand that's all about inclusivity? The whole brand is built on the idea of sharing global flavors with everyone. It comes from a founder story that is that shows the drive and you know entrepreneurialism of immigrants. I am curious, like how do you, the cognitive dissonance between that and how some of the conversations in culture are going. How do you think about that?
Yeah, well, for at Unite, we believe in seeing the way that we're the more, what matters is how we're the same, not how we're different. And politics and media and everybody will try to drive a wedge between othering somebody. Oh, we don't like them because they believe something different than us. And for me at Unite, it's like that's the whole reason I created this brand, is to use food as this instrument of inclusion. And that's why we make flavors for every culture and everybody. So American culture, every culture, right? We want to build a wellness table where everybody's invited to have a seat. Obviously, there's a lot of benefit in diversity. It's not opinion. It's been studied and fact-based that when there's diversity, thoughts and the quality of thoughts in a room go up and the success of businesses goes up. So it's like not diversity for diversity's sake, but diversity because it's actually good for business. And, I always say diversity is delicious. So, it's really, it'll be an interesting, you know, moment in time here to see what happens with DEI and inclusivity and everything. But at the end of the day, at Unite, we're really about like celebrating, each other and how we're the same and building bridges of compassion through food.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. Yeah, there's so many positives, and people love the food. I mean, like that's an amazing, it's a great way to share and learn. Tell me a little bit about, you did mention you got amazing distribution in a very short time. What is your advice to others starting brands, and how did you approach, you know, the kind of distribution footprint and how to get it?
Yeah, I think for us, we did get distribution really fast. When the world's Fortune 1 company says we want your product and puts you in, it's incredibly validating as a brand and, an ability to execute at a large retailer obviously shows other retailers, smaller ones, medium ones, that you can do it. So it's like, you've earned your stripes. And so, but I think having said that, it's really, I think in this day and age and 5 years later, what I would recommend would actually be a more local approach. And that was actually my goal was to like kind of start at home, own home, and building concentric circles kind of out from there. I think really failing fast, identifying your customer, testing your product in retail just in a small format, see is it selling, see is your packaging standing out, and then growing and like accelerating and trying to, maintain as much control as possible, maintain as much capital efficiency as you can because it's a very expensive business. It is easy to get over your skis very quickly with large distribution. But I had come also from a background of big box and large distribution. Plumbing and hardware, not food, but I knew what the stakes and I knew that, there would be big expectations of, fulfillment and inventory. And I was prepared to take those risks. But I wouldn't say that unless you understand big box and unless you understand mass, like that's necessarily where you should start first. You should probably just start locally.
Yeah, that's a big scale. Like you get that wrong, then there are issues.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you started with your family's plumbing business and then took the gamble to build your own brand, which is amazing. Um, what are the key things that you learned going out on your own versus being part of I mean, it's a completely different category. Like, what are the biggest things that you learned, things that were transferable?
Yeah, I think the biggest overall lesson in business and life and whatever you want to call it is that people do business with people that they like, right? And people that they enjoy. So, like, bringing fairness and integrity and clarity and clear expectations to any partnership, whether it's a co-man or a packaging supplier or a data supplier or anything like that. Like, those are table stakes. So I think, if you can operate at a very high level, have a bias for action, like those are the things that create success in whatever your industry.
Yeah,
um, I was very lucky. I got to spend 17 years building a business, watching a business be built, since I was a child, actually. So before then, and having this front row seat to entrepreneurship and allowing myself, I was able to get involved in everything from operations to HR to marketing to, distribution to, setting up new warehouses and everything in between. And so I have this great globalist, global education in supply chain and in manufacturing and in distribution. So it really serves me for anything I do in life now. But yeah, I mean, people go, huh? Plumbing to food? Like, it makes no sense. Like, how did you make that jump? But I think business is the same. Your product is a widget in many ways, and it's
yeah,
all about finding that product market fit and finding who your fan base is.
yeah, amazing. And in terms of the fan base, so talk to me about how you market. What's your kind of approach to marketing, growing community, etc.?
So our marketing is really organic. I mean, I think the brand embodies inclusion and welcoming people in. So we like to tell stories of our consumers. We like to engage with them as much as possible. And then the marketing is really just word of mouth and on social and, TikTok and Instagram and, building audiences there. And then people, when people discover us organically, like that's the best, right? When they find us at an airport or find us at their local coffee shop or gym, that's when we get a lot of praise letters like, oh, I just found your bar. And like, I think at grocery stores, it's a little bit hard because we've been so conditioned to just go in and replenish because of COVID. The supermarket became like a place of fear instead of like a place of like, where you go and wander around and then, add inflation to all that. And then people are, so watching every dollar and every penny, you know, premium brands really had a tough go over the past like few years. And so I think as we see consumers want to take care of their health and buy natural products, minimally processed products, then, we'll have an advantage.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about some of your distribution almost as a marketing channel. The
Mhm.
joy of discovery of finding it not in the supermarket, but at your local coffee shop. Was that a
Exactly.
conscious choice to kind of build out alternative distribution to kind of grow, awareness and that kind of different types of consumers?
Yeah, we're very much just like on, the very beginning of that journey, but that's, kind of my own experience. I love being delighted when I'm traveling and finding, a new product that I love, that I get to bring home and tell my friends about. So it's interacting with consumers at the need state. So right when they need it.
How have you handled like the raising money and funding? I get a lot of people coming to talk to me about, funding and building business that way. What's been your approach?
Yeah, one of the hardest parts, I think, for a lot of people in brands. I was lucky in that, like, again, I had my family business that we actually had an exit event. So I was able to use my own money to bootstrap kind of this business. So we've been bootstrapped, but that's a very, privileged position that not many people get to be in and not get to start that way. And so that's why I talk about capital efficiency. You want to make sure that like every dollar that you spend is wise. And like, I think of it as soldiers, like that dollar has to go out and capture 10 more soldiers. Like you can't just like send a dollar out and not get a return. And that's the hardest part is that there are a lot of startup costs. If you want to make a high quality product, if you want to make it at a very reputable co-man, there are high minimums. And so it's, you have to go in with a very strong financial plan of like how are you going to get the money ahead of time.
Yeah, amazing. But again, going back to you help build a business, you understand the financials and the value of cost efficiency and really thinking this through. So yeah, amazing. Um, I have, the food industry is, you know, it's one of those incredibly cluttered, fast moving, so many different trends. And actually, I think your brand is interesting because it kind of leans into quite a lot of headwinds. You've got wellness, you've got things like food allergy, gluten free, you've got global flavors, like protein with the whole GLP-1, etc. Like, I think it's a really interesting uh, idea because it literally leans into so many good headwinds that are coming forward. How do you keep up with trends? What do you do to stay current, stay inspired?
I've been really lucky in that I think, naturally like a trend spotter. I just think I have it innately in me. Like before I started Unite, I actually wanted to do a keto product. This is like in 2018 or 17 before keto was like even a thing. And I even trademarked like ketofatbomb.com and keto, diet and all these keto things. But then the keto diet made me sick and I couldn't like do keto because I'm like, I can't sell something of something that like I can't metabolize this much fat. And so I'm lucky in that way. But I think strategically with like AI and all these things that are coming online, it's going to be a really interesting product development cycle that we go into with innovation and like, can AI, innovate better than humans? And the best thing that I've always done is just like pay attention. What are people doing? What are they talking about? Like in my social circles, in my life. And so um there's a lot of that. I do research, read a lot of articles. I try to like, stay up to date on what's going on in our industry. But at the end of the day, like I've also just made a common sense product. Like I've used all natural ingredients that are never going to be bad for you. Like it's never going to be bad to have, some almond butter and some almonds and dates. And, I wanted it to be diet agnostic. I didn't want to like do a keto. I didn't want to do a low carb. I didn't want to do a low fat or whatever. I just made a common sense food product. And I think that that's what's missing in food. It's just like common sense. Like we're all trying to like, find these magical ingredients and magical, edge over the competition. But at the end of the day, like my strategy has been common sense.
Yeah, you strike me as pretty common sense, find a problem, solve it, um, know what you need to do, make sure everything. I love that. Any advice to other people thinking about taking that jump? Like you sounded like, you'd done business, you had an exit, and then it sounds like you were thinking about what do I do next? You didn't want to just do nothing. You wanted something, you wanted to build something. Like, what advice do you have for other people kind of thinking about it?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what stage of your life you're in, right? Like for me, it's about mission now. Like, I'm in my mid 40s, like it's about mission and impact. Like that's what I want the back half of my life to be about. And so like this product, this brand, what we're doing, it's all about leaving a lasting legacy in a positive way, as in the world. And so that's really important to me. I think in my younger years, it's about quite frankly like succeeding. Like what does it take to succeed? How do I learn as much as I can? I think if you were starting out, like if it was me starting in my 20s, I would probably go work for a startup food brand and get my feet wet and understand what's going on in this industry. This is such a fun industry. Like the trade shows are so fun, the people are so wonderful, and there's a lot of synergy. So people aren't as competitive. People are willing to share. So it's a great industry to be in. It's just know your strengths and know what you want to focus on. And so it's not enough to be just a Me Too product. It's not enough to be the 10th version of something. Bring something that is innovative, that is scientifically backed, that is statistically backed, that can make a difference.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the making a difference. I know that you did give away a lot of products during COVID to first responders, firemen, people. You've done a lot of your brand is built on that kind of giving back idea. And then I saw that you're the founder of a kind of non-profit that also supports founders. Tell me a little bit about those elements of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think, when I got into this space, I realized that it is very lopsided with like who gets funding and how much money is out there and distribution. And so in that very first year in 2020, I got together with a few folks and there was five of us. And, we wanted to create a place where BIPOC CEOs in the food industry felt, could get support, could get access, could get amplification. And again, like diversity brings strength. Diversity in innovation, diversity in everything is going to create a better food system for all. And so it was just very organic. And so as long as I've been at Unite, as long as we started kind of included was the summer of that year. And it's the largest nonprofit of BIPOC CEOs in the world. Collection, there's almost 500. And, we do a lot of good work with our partners at New Hope and Specialty Food Association. And we've been able to create a lot of impact. And it's just in the DNA of what I wanted to do. Again, my own impact, my own legacy, in the second half of my life here. But giving back is, core to the brand too. We've had a partnership with Convoy of Hope for the past 3 years. And so our bars go all over the world, and nothing makes me happier than when I see us, our QR code scanned across the world or across the nation. And I know that it got to exactly where it's supposed to go, whether it's a hurricane victim or somebody displaced because of war or any other kind of environmental issue. So it's been a fun part of building is like giving back.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that is amazing. Um, as part of that, it sounds like that's a core part, not just of the brand, but of also something that is fulfilling for you. I'm just wondering, are there, apart from all this great business and, philanthropy, like what are the things that help you, like what practices you mentioned manifesting earlier, like are there, what do you do to kind of grow personally above and beyond this? Are any tools, any kind of rituals or practices that you have embraced?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in a higher power. I believe in God, and so for me, it's like really the spirit of surrender, of like Your will be done, not mine, and let make a path for me if it's meant to be, and close it if it's not. And so, really living that out. But it's also very important to me to have a very clear vision. I've been making vision boards for probably 15 years, or probably even 20 years now, like a long time. And so before it was like very popular. And so I think it's really important to have a very clear vision of how I want my life to look, how I want it to feel, and then be moved into the momentum of that. And I don't come, my parents were both extremely poor growing up, right? Like, my dad will tell you he didn't come from ground level. He came from under the ground, he had very limited education, no resources, no connection, no network. And so has been able to build an incredible legacy for himself and his life of coming out of extreme poverty, extreme situations. I mean, not even having shoes to wear, one outfit, like, just that level of poverty, and how you can turn that around in even one generation. So I have a unique perspective in that I know the blessings that I have and I know the opportunity that I have, and I don't want to waste a single moment because I know how, in another world, like I would have been one of the convoy kids that I support. Like I would have been that kid in Africa, that didn't have enough food to eat. Like just by of if he hadn't figured it out, if my mom hadn't figured it out, that would have been me. Right. And so I'm very blessed. I'm very thankful and grateful for the opportunities that I have. And I just want to use them for good.
Yeah. Oh my God, amazing. I mean, yeah, you're super inspirational. I wish I could see one of these vision boards, because I'm sure they're fabulous. And it, everything, you definitely seem like someone that kind of sets a goal and, makes it happen. Um, yeah, amazing. So I have a last few set of questions. What's on the horizon for Unite? Like, what are your near-term, long-term goals? New categories, new flavors, yeah, what's
New formats and new categories are always something I'm talking about and thinking about. The problem is I have too many ideas, so I always have to like hone myself in. We want to win at bars, though. We want to win it with our core product first before we get distracted with new categories. And then it's just continuing to build with our consumers, interacting with them, intercepting them where they're at, growing these alternative channels, bringing Unite to more mouths, right? To get as many people to try them as possible.
okay? All right. The last few questions are more kind of quick fire. So,
Sure.
all right. What is the best career advice, worst career advice you've ever had?
Best career advice is sometimes bad news is just bad news, and don't be afraid to like just solve the thing. I think it's like in the cover up and trying to mitigate things, where things get lost. But like if you have an issue, like go straight to your supplier, go straight to your customer, discuss it, create a plan of action. And so that really served me well in so many different ways. Even, my entire life is just attack the problem head on.
And worst advice?
Um, that people can change. People don't really change.
So funny. Yeah, okay. What other brands do you admire, both inside of food or outside of food?
Oh, there's so many in both. I think the person that I admire the most is probably Sarah Blakely from Spanx. She created a product that is ubiquitous with femininity and and belonging and inclusion. And she did it, bootstrapped with $10,000 and, no connections and no resources. So I take a lot of inspiration from her. In the food space, I think, I love Denise Woodard at Partake. I think she's incredibly inspiring, who we introduced. Laura Orley of Daily Crunch, another superstar woman who I just adore and admire. And there's literally so many within Included. We have so many founders. There, just go to any trade show and that you're going to be inspired by all the women there.
Amazing. What about mentors? Do you have mentors? I'm always curious if people have mentors. I can imagine you're a mentor to people, but who are your mentors?
Yeah, I mean, I love learning. So I like to surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. And so I've actually created my own like food CPG forum of other founders and other people in this space. And so we're actually getting together next month in Dallas and getting to, we've been together for 4 years and we meet once a month for 2 hours online. And, we did COVID together. And so I like peer to peer mentorship. I want to be with people in the trenches doing it too. And then I do have like professional and kind of advisors like Elliot Began from TIG. He's amazing. And, kind of somebody who's been ahead of me in this food industry that I can ask the tough questions to.
Amazing. What do you wish that you'd learned earlier in your career?
Um, that I can figure it out. That, I think in the beginning of my career was always looking for an expert to tell me the answer. And sometimes, it's good to get information from experts, but that your gut instinct is also an expert because it is, it's informing you based on your subconscious of what you've observed. And you just sometimes you don't know where that feeling comes from, but your mind does. And so I say beware of experts, but also, because they can steer you wrong. Like everybody at the beginning of this journey told me nobody's going to buy these flavors. Why would you want to make global flavors? And then global flavors became this huge trend, right? Like nobody has a crystal ball. And so we're all guessing of what the future is. And so I think you can figure it out, trust your gut, get input, but at the end of the day, distill it.
Yeah. No, that's great, great advice to anyone there, and I think part of the entrepreneur's journey. Um, what do you think your key superpowers are that have helped you do this? You've got lots, obviously, but what do you see as your superpower?
I think I'm really calm under pressure. So the more intense things get, the more calm I am, and my mind works well in those scenarios where I can see clearly what needs to happen. I don't, there's not like that panic or anxiety. Like action kind of cures anxiety for me, and so I think that is what I've observed from people around me. Like that's pretty unique. Like this ability to stay kind of calm through the storm.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I wasn't expecting that. You mentioned so many other things that are so good.
Mhm.
But that sounds like a great one. What does success look like for you personally?
I think if I'm looking back like 10, 15 years from now, it's, success for me will be, I've built Unite into a household name that's synonymous with unity and love. And it's more than just a brand, it's really a cultural movement. And that the brand resonates with families and athletes and everybody that uses them to get through their day, but that really at the end of the day the brand's impact through our charitable giving, through impacting lives, is what stands out. And that's the legacy, and that's success, is how many people can we help.
Yeah,
And when I want to quit, actually, like the days that I think it's hard and I want to quit, I think to myself, I literally have this thought: there's somebody in my future that's counting on me not to give up right now. Right? There's somebody that I'm going to help in my future that needs me to get through this day.
amazing, amazing. All right, last question, and you might have already kind of answered this, but the podcast is all about professional jealousy, and it's all about, being inspired by amazing people in their journeys. I- You know, is it Sarah Blakely? Like, who are you professionally jealous of? Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely Sarah Blakely is one of them, but I think any female food founder that's kind of made it through, like Lara American of Lara Bar, Stacy of Stacy's Pita Chips, like women that didn't have a seat at the table and made one and were able to exit and have successful exits in our space, are really, I'm always like starstruck. And, there's some that are haven't sold yet, like Gail from Collie Power. And every time I see her at a trade show, I'm like, yeah, I worship you. Or, Anouk from Belgian Boys, who's still building too. And she's just a mom and just had her third kid. And, it's amazing to me, the women in our industry. And that's who, I have. The men too are wonderful. I'm not to bash any men. I
Yeah.
love the men too.
Men are fine.
They're great. But it's the balance, like the moms that are balancing life and work and building a brand and doing it successfully.
Amazing. Well, it was so good to chat with you. You're so inspirational, and I'm really grateful for your time because you sound pretty busy. So it's like, thank you again.